It started with late-night shifts that weren't on the hospital's schedule. Marcus noticed Lena getting home well past midnight, claiming equipment failures, last-minute patient transfers, or mandatory paperwork. At first, he believed her. Trust was never something he questioned in his marriage, but it became harder to ignore the changes. Lena had started wearing makeup again, buying new clothes, and keeping her phone locked with a code she hadn't used in years. At work, Lena was vibrant and cheerful. Colleagues noticed the change and quietly speculated Adrian, a local counselor and motivational speaker, had begun volunteering for a mental health initiative Lena coordinated. They bonded quickly. Adrian, open about his transition and passionate about helping people through identity struggles, offered Lena something Marcus hadn't in a long time: empathy without pride, attention without pressure. But Lena's secret didn't stay secret for long. One night, Marcus borrowed her car to run an errand and found a folded note under the passenger seat. It was a short message. "Last night meant more than I can say. I'm proud of you for choosing yourself. A." Marcus didn't know who A was, but the handwriting was elegant, the tone romantic, and suddenly, everything Lena had done for the last 3 months felt different. He didn't confront her, not yet. He wanted answers first, ones he could verify. And in the days that followed, he began a quiet investigation of his own. The note burned in Marcus's pocket for days. He read it obsessively, dissecting every word, every flourish of ink. Proud of you. Choosing yourself. It wasn't just about lust. This was something deeper, and that frightened him more than anything. He didn't sleep much. At work, he started snapping at coworkers. He skipped meals. Lena, caught up in her own whirlwind, barely noticed the shift. One night, after she fell asleep early, exhausted from what she called a 16-hour shift, Marcus slipped her phone from the nightstand. The passcode had changed. He tried her birthday, their anniversary. Nothing. That made it worse. She was hiding something. He placed the phone back undisturbed. Instead, he retraced her days off, noting dates and matching them with hospital schedules. One inconsistency led him to the website of a community wellness center in Midtown, where Lena had supposedly volunteered for a mental health initiative. Scanning the staff page, Marcus stopped cold. There he was. Adrian Hale, community counselor and public speaker. A man with soft eyes and a confident smile. A bio that mentioned his experience mentoring LGBTQ+ youth and a speaking tour titled The Power of Truth. Marcus stared for a long time, then reread the note. Proud of you for choosing yourself. Something twisted in his chest. He printed the page and folded it into his wallet. The next day, he drove down to the center, sat in the truck, watched. Around noon, Adrian stepped outside to take a call. Marcus froze, fists tightening around the steering wheel. He didn't know how to feel. Betrayed, humiliated, angry, confused. He drove away. That night, Lena was in the kitchen when he walked in. She smiled at him and asked about his day. He said nothing, just stared. For a second too long. She noticed, but she didn't press 3 days past. The longest Marcus had ever gone without kissing his wife goodnight. He slept on the edge of the bed, his back to her. He didn't touch her. Barely spoke. Lena chalked it up to stress, maybe a job site incident he didn't want to talk about. She left him alone. But Marcus wasn't just stewing, he was planning. Each morning, before she woke, he would scroll Adrian Hale's social media motivational quotes, photos with students. Event flyers, not a trace of Lena in the public feed. But in one post, a blurry group shot of a volunteer retreat, Marcus saw her, arm loosely around Adrian, smiling, relaxed the way she hadn't looked at him in months. That night, Lena said she had a women's group meeting after work. She even dressed more casually, as if trying not to draw attention. Marcus nodded but didn't respond. When the front door closed, he waited 10 minutes, then grabbed his keys. He followed her. It wasn't a church meeting. She drove to a modest apartment complex in Rivertown. Marcus parked at a distance, engine off. He watched her walk up the stairs and knock twice on a third-floor door. Adrian opened it. She went inside. Marcus sat there for over an hour, gripping the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tight his gums hurt. His eyes burned from not blinking. A part of him wanted to march up the stairs. Another part wanted to drive away and never return. Instead, he drove to a liquor store, bought a bottle of cheap whiskey, and drank it in silence in the garage. Inside the apartment, Lena sat across from Adrian on the couch. She confessed that she felt sick with guilt, not for the affair, but for the secrets. Adrian, calm as always, told her the truth doesn't need to come in all at once. "When you're ready," he said. "But if you're not honest soon, you might not have a choice." Neither of them realized someone was watching. The next morning, Marcus was already dressed when Lena woke up. She blinked at the harsh sound of the belt sliding through his jeans, the way his boots stomped harder than usual on the wood floor. "Everything okay?" she asked, groggy. He didn't answer. Lena sat up. "Marcus?" He turned from the door just long enough to say, "Fine, just work." Then he left. At the site, Marcus could barely hold a conversation. He barked at one of the younger crew members for misplacing a power drill. When another guy made a joke about relationships, Marcus snapped, grabbing him by the collar before walking off to cool down. He stood in the brake trailer, staring blankly at the wall. One of the foremen offered to cover for him the rest of the day. Marcus didn't argue. He just left. That afternoon, Lena came home early. She'd been distracted at work during a routine check on a patient's IV. Her hand trembled so badly she had to excuse herself. In the locker room mirror, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. The truth had taken root, no longer something to postpone. That night, she told herself, she would tell Marcus. But when she got home, the lights were off. His car was gone. She poured a glass of water and sat at the table, waiting. Marcus wasn't at the bar. He wasn't at work. He was parked outside Adrian's apartment again, this time in the shadows, watching. Adrian emerged around 7, dressed neatly, phone in hand, heading toward his car. Marcus stepped out of his truck, fast and silent. Adrian didn't see him until the shadow loomed beside him. "You're Adrian," Marcus said, flat and low. Adrian turned. "Yes, I am. Can I help?" Marcus didn't let him finish. He didn't throw a punch. Instead, he just stared. "You know who I am?" Marcus asked. Adrian hesitated. "You're Lena's husband." Marcus nodded. "So you know what this is?" Adrian didn't flinch. "I know what I am to her, and I know she needs to talk to you." "You think you know everything, huh?" Marcus's voice cracked. "You don't even know what you are." That line sat in the air like poison. Adrian's jaw clenched. "I know exactly who I am." Marcus didn't answer. He walked away. But inside him, something cracked. Lena stood in the kitchen, pacing. The ticking of the wall clock scratched at her nerves. She tried to prepare the words in her head, but they scattered the moment she tried to speak them aloud. The silence of the house felt heavier than usual. She kept expecting the door to creak open. When it finally did, just past 9 p.m., she jolted like she'd been shot. Marcus stepped inside. His expression unreadable. Not angry, not calm, just hollow. "You're late," she said, her voice thin. He shrugged off his jacket and didn't answer. Walked past her into the living room. She followed him. "I need to talk to you," she began, "about something important." He didn't sit, just stood near the window, back turned. "It's about someone I've been seeing." Now he turned slowly. She took a breath. "His name is Adrian. I met him through work, volunteer outreach. It started as friendship. It wasn't planned. But I need you to hear me when I say, it's not about you being unworthy, it's about me being lost." Marcus stared at her like he was looking through glass. "You're sleeping with him?" Lena nodded, eyes burning. Is he a real man to you?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "You heard me." She swallowed. "He's a man." "Yes." Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked like he might speak again, but didn't. Instead, he walked past her to the kitchen, opened a drawer, pulled out a pack of matches, then lit one and stared at the flame. Just for a second. Then he let it burn out. "You lied to me for months," he said. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't even understand it myself at first." He turned. "What do you mean you didn't understand? You don't accidentally end up in bed with someone, especially not someone like that." Lena flinched. "He's not some abstract concept, Marcus. He's a person." There was a long pause. Finally, he said, So what now? You just move on with him? Start a new life? Pretend I never existed? Lena hesitated. I don't know what I want yet. I just know I couldn't keep living a lie. That was the last straw. Marcus didn't shout. He didn't throw anything. He just turned and walked out the front door, leaving it half open behind him. Lena didn't chase him. She sat on the couch and started crying. And in the parking lot outside Adrian's apartment, Marcus sat in his truck again. This time, the glove box was open, and inside it was a loaded pistol. The pistol had been in the truck for years. Marcus wasn't the kind of man who liked surprises, and the streets of Detroit didn't always offer second chances. But until now, the gun had collected dust. It had never felt like a solution, until tonight. He ran his fingers over the cold steel, resting it in his palm like something sacred. The weight didn't scare him. It steadied him. Adrian's apartment was less than 10 minutes away. Marcus didn't start the truck. He sat, thinking about the last 5 years, about Lena's laughter in the morning, her hand on his back when he couldn't sleep, how she once said he made her feel safe. And now? Now she said she didn't know what she wanted. He couldn't make sense of it. He'd worked hard, paid the bills, stayed loyal. He wasn't perfect, but betrayal? From her? With someone like that? The idea churned through his head, louder than the engine ever could. Meanwhile, Lena sat on the floor by the couch, still holding a pillow to her chest like it might stop the ache. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from release. She had said the things she never thought she'd be able to say. Now came the hard part, the fallout. She picked up her phone. She didn't call Marcus. She called Adrian. "Hey," he answered gently. "I told him," she said, voice cracking. "He didn't say much, just walked out." "Where is he now?" "I don't know, but something felt wrong." Adrian paused. "Do you want me to come over?" "No, just be careful, okay?" Adrian's voice lowered. "Lena, I saw the look in his eyes the other night. I've seen that look before. You need to be somewhere safe. I'll go to my sister's, but promise me you won't do anything." "I won't." But they both knew he might not have a choice. Back in the truck, Marcus finally turned the key in the ignition, and Adrian, after hanging up, went to the closet and quietly locked the front door. Marcus drove through the dim Detroit streets with no music, no radio, just the soft hum of his engine and the rising noise in his mind. The city around him blurred. Traffic lights flashed red and green across his windshield, but he didn't slow. His hands stayed tight on the wheel, knuckles white, jaw clenched. The words Lena had said played on a loop. "I don't know what I want." He's a man. Yes. He gripped the wheel harder. The pistol sat on the passenger seat, now loaded ready. A decade of construction work had trained him to recognize pressure, fatigue, risk, but none of that compared to the rupture inside him now. He didn't think of himself as a violent man, but tonight didn't feel like something he could just walk off. At a red light, he briefly looked at himself in the rearview mirror. His eyes were bloodshot, face pale, mouth slack. The man looking back at him didn't look like someone about to have a conversation. He looked like someone on the edge of erasing something. At the same moment, Lena threw a duffel bag together in silence. She moved mechanically. Toothbrush, charger, change of clothes. She had just texted her sister when her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She picked it up. "Mrs. Whitfield?" The voice was steady, professional. "Yes? This is Officer Marlane with the Detroit Police Department. A call came in from a Mr. Adrian Hale. He expressed concern about a potential domestic situation and asked that we check on you. Are you safe?" Lena froze. "I'm okay," she said carefully. "My husband left after I told him something. He hasn't come back. Do you have reason to believe he might be a danger to himself or someone else?" Lena looked toward the door. "Yes," she said, her voice cracking. "Yes, I do. We're dispatching a car to your residence and to Mr. Hale's apartment as well. Please stay inside and don't try to contact him for now. Can you do that for me?" She nodded, then remembered. "He has a gun. He keeps it in his truck." There was a pause. "We'll handle it, ma'am." Meanwhile, Marcus parked across the street from Adrian's building. He didn't reach for the gun. Not yet. He just stared at the entrance. Waited. No plan. Just impulse and pressure. Somewhere inside, something still flickered. Was it doubt, pain, pride, or something older and darker? Inside his apartment, Adrian paced. He had double-checked all the locks. The hallway was quiet, the lights flickering overhead. His phone sat on the kitchen counter, already used to make one call. But if things got worse, he wasn't sure a second would matter. And outside, unseen, Marcus reached into the glove box again. From the driver's seat of his truck, Marcus saw the soft hallway light flicker behind Adrian's third-floor window. The building was quiet, too quiet for a Friday night in Detroit. His eyes were locked on that one apartment. He didn't know what he was waiting for. Adrian to come out? A reason to walk away? The urge to kick down the door? The gun sat on the seat like it belonged there. Then a light flared behind him. Headlights. A car slowing down. Marcus tensed and tilted the mirror. A police cruiser. It rolled by slowly, the officer inside glancing at parked vehicles. Marcus stayed still. The cruiser moved on, turning at the corner. For now. Inside the apartment, Adrian paced. His phone buzzed with another message from Lena. "They're coming. Please don't open the door for anyone but the police." He typed, "I won't." He didn't mention the knife tucked inside the kitchen drawer or the bat resting behind the door. He didn't know if he could use either, but he also didn't know what Marcus was capable of anymore. Marcus watched as shadows moved behind the window. In his chest, something cracked open, not rage, but a deep, hollow ache. He remembered the way Lena used to look at him, the way her voice used to soften when he came home late. The meals, the quiet Saturdays, the shared dreams about buying a cabin up north. And now she had given all that to someone else, someone who, in his mind, didn't even deserve to be called a man. He touched the pistol, and then the apartment building door opened. Marcus instinctively ducked slightly. It wasn't Adrian, a tenant walking her dog. Marcus stared. His hand was shaking. He looked at the gun again. And then he heard it. Sirens. Not loud, not urgent, just enough. Another cruiser pulled up across the street. This time, 2 officers stepped out. Calm, cautious. They didn't look at his truck. They entered the building. Inside, Adrian opened the door after checking through the peephole. One officer asked him to remain inside. They were checking the perimeter, they said. Just a precaution. Adrian nodded. Outside, Marcus remained motionless in his truck. His hands now gripped the wheel again. The gun was still there, but he didn't pick it up. He was starting to shake, not with fear, but with something that looked a lot like grief. The police remained inside the building longer than Marcus expected. Their presence wasn't aggressive, no flashing lights, no blaring commands, but it was enough to break the rhythm of his thoughts. He'd envisioned something direct, a confrontation, an outburst, maybe even a final act. But now, with officers walking the halls, with radios crackling softly in the distance, everything felt paused. He glanced at the gun again, still untouched, still loaded. But something had shifted. The weight of everything was no longer driving him forward. It was pressing down on him, suffocating. The thing inside him that wanted revenge had lost some of its shape. Marcus rubbed his hands over his face and leaned back against the seat. Inside the apartment, Adrian sat in the kitchen. He hadn't moved in 20 minutes. One of the officers checked in briefly, confirmed that Marcus's truck had been located, but that he hadn't approached the building. Adrian kept nodding, grateful but unnerved. The idea of someone sitting outside his home, armed and silent, chilled him deeper than any direct threat. He sent another text to Lena. "He hasn't come in, they found his truck." Lena: "Thank God, maybe he's calming down." But Adrian didn't feel calm. He felt watched. And outside, Marcus was still staring up at the apartment. He imagined Adrian inside, maybe pacing, maybe holding Lena's old sweatshirt, maybe planning to erase the last 10 years of Marcus's life and start fresh with the woman who had once promised forever to someone else. The gun called to him again, and then something unexpected happened. Another police cruiser pulled up behind him. Lights still off, engine quiet. This time, an officer approached his window. Marcus didn't move. Tap, tap. He rolled it down slowly. "Sir, is everything all right?" The officer's voice was polite but alert. Marcus looked at him, hollow-eyed. "Just thinking," he replied. The officer's eyes flicked to the seat. He couldn't see the gun, not yet. "Mind stepping out of the vehicle for a moment?" the officer asked. Marcus didn't argue. He opened the door, slowly, and stepped into the cool night air. Inside the apartment, Adrian's phone buzzed again. Lena. They're talking to him now. Adrian walked to the window, peered through the blinds, and there he saw it, Marcus, standing outside the truck, arms loose at his sides, speaking quietly with the officer. It wasn't over, but it hadn't happened yet. The officer studying Marcus took mental notes, tense posture, red-rimmed eyes, uneven breathing. Marcus looked like a man who hadn't slept in days, like someone whose world had folded in on itself. Mind telling me why you're parked here? The officer asked. Marcus paused. Waiting on someone, he muttered. Who? He looked away. Doesn't matter. The officer motioned to his partner, who now circled the truck. When she reached the passenger side, her flashlight beam caught the glint of metal. Her voice cut through the air. Gun! Passenger seat! Marcus flinched. The first officer's voice changed. Firmer now. Sir, step back. Hands where I can see them. Try. Marcus obeyed. Not because he was afraid, because he felt like he'd already failed at everything else. Within seconds, his hands were behind his back. Cold cuffs wrapped his wrists. Inside the apartment, Adrian watched as Marcus was quietly restrained. His legs nearly gave out. Not out of triumph or fear, but relief that the night might not end in a headline. Lena's phone buzzed on the floor next to her. Unknown number. Your husband is in custody. The weapon has been secured. You are safe for now. She dropped the phone and wept. Downstairs, officers recovered the firearm. The serial number was clean. The clip was full. The safety was off. Marcus sat in the back of the cruiser, staring at the cage between him and the front seat. He didn't ask for a lawyer, didn't say a word, just stared out the window. At the station, during intake, they asked him if he intended to harm anyone. No, he said. Then why were you sitting outside his place with a loaded weapon? He looked up, finally. I wanted to scare him, just remind him I was still here. You think that's reasonable? Marcus shook his head. I don't think anything is reasonable anymore. That night, Adrian barely slept. Lena couldn't either. Though physically safe, both lived under a new shadow. Marcus wasn't gone. He was still out there, detained. Yes, but still Marcus, still her husband. And inside Marcus, something had shifted, not toward closure, but toward collapse. The holding cell was small, gray, and colder than Marcus expected. He sat on the bench, hands on his knees, staring at the scuffed concrete floor. There were no voices in his head now, only stillness, and a slow, creeping numbness that settled into his chest like rot. A public defender met with him briefly the next morning. You're lucky it didn't go further, she said, flipping through the thin case file. No prior record, no shots fired, but the weapon was loaded, and you were parked outside the residence of a man your wife is now involved with. That's not going to look good. I didn't raise the gun, Marcus said, but you brought it. He didn't answer. She exhaled and looked at him. They'll likely charge you with unlawful possession in a threatening context, maybe menacing. If Adrian presses for a restraining order, things will get tighter for you. Marcus nodded, not really absorbing anything. Meanwhile, Lena hadn't told her sister the full story. She kept it simple. Marcus had a breakdown. There was someone else involved. The police stepped in. But she hadn't mentioned Adrian by name. Not yet. Not because she was ashamed, but because she wasn't ready to invite the world into the storm just yet. At the hospital, Lena was placed on administrative leave. Word of the police call had reached HR, and while they were sympathetic, the situation required space. Go rest, they said. Take care of yourself. She didn't argue. She just nodded and left. Adrian, on the other hand, had trouble resting at all. Every sound in the hallway made his muscles tighten. Every knock at a neighbor's door sent his heart racing. He had lived through threats before, verbal slurs, quiet prejudice, but nothing like this. Nothing that close, nothing with a gun. A detective came by that afternoon to take an official statement. Adrian recounted everything. How Marcus had approached him earlier in the week, the things he said, the feeling he had that something worse was coming. He kept his tone factual, but inside, he was unraveling. The detective nodded as he jotted down notes. We'll be watching him closely, especially if you decide to press charges or file for protection." Adrian hesitated. "I just want it to stop." "We understand, but people don't usually stop on their own." That night, Lena debated whether to call Marcus. She picked up her phone 5 times and put it back down each time. What could she even say? That she was sorry? That she still cared? That she didn't? Eventually, she texted him 2 words. "Please stop!" Marcus didn't respond, but he read it. And for the first time in days, he felt something new: shame. 2 days later, Marcus appeared before a judge. His appearance was disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw, posture slumped. The courtroom was nearly empty. No reporters, no family, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the shuffling of papers. The judge reviewed the file slowly, tapping a pen on the desk. No criminal history. Cooperative during arrest. Weapon was licensed, but carried in a manner consistent with intimidation. He looked up. "Mr. Whitfield, do you understand the seriousness of your actions?" Marcus didn't lift his eyes. "Yes, Your Honor. You've been charged with unlawful possession in a threatening context. Bail is set at $10,000. Conditional release will require compliance with a no-contact order." Adrian had filed it that morning. "You are to stay at least 300 feet from Mr. Hale, his residence, place of work, and any known associates. Any violation will result in immediate revocation of bail and further charges. Do you understand?" Marcus nodded. "You will also undergo a psychiatric evaluation within the week. Failure to attend will be considered a violation of court terms." A public bail fund posted the amount later that day. By evening, Marcus was out. But freedom didn't feel like relief. It felt like exposure. He didn't go home. Instead, he checked into a motel near the outskirts of the city, a place that smelled of bleach and cheap cigarette smoke. He didn't unpack, just lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling until morning. Meanwhile, Lena was meeting with a counselor for the first time in years. It was required by the hospital before reinstatement, but she welcomed it. She spoke about the strain in her marriage, the layers of guilt, the love that had faded long before Adrian entered the picture. And then she finally spoke Adrian's name. "He gave me space to be honest, not just about who I was with Marcus, but about who I actually am." The counselor nodded gently. "And now, I'm scared," Lena admitted. "I'm scared Marcus is going to fall apart, and I'm scared it might be my fault." "Violence," the counselor said, "is always a choice. You didn't make it for him." Back in the city, Adrian resumed work, but cautiously. His colleagues were supportive, though the undercurrent of fear hadn't fully left him. He updated locks, added cameras, and made sure to vary his schedule. He didn't want to live like a target, but couldn't afford to pretend he wasn't one. And in a motel room, Marcus sat in front of the mirror, studying himself, not to fix anything, but to understand what had broken. Marcus didn't show up for his first court-ordered therapy session. Instead, he stayed in bed until late afternoon, then went for a drive with no destination. The city passed by in blurs. Laundromats, diners, families walking home from school. None of it touched him. He was submerged in something heavier than silence. He parked outside a hardware store and stared at the people walking in and out. Normal people. Unaware people. He didn't go inside. He didn't buy anything. He just sat there until night fell, and then drove back to the motel where the clerk didn't even glance up as he passed. Meanwhile, Lena sat with her counselor for the 3rd time that week. She looked more tired than before, but her voice had steadied. "I think," she said, "I kept waiting for him to show remorse." "Has he?" "I don't know, maybe, but not in the way that changes anything." The counselor waited. "I used to feel responsible for him," Lena admitted, "like I owed him something just for staying. But now I see it wasn't loyalty. It was fear of what he'd become if I left." "You don't sound afraid now." "I'm not exactly. I can't stop wondering if I caused all of this." The counselor leaned forward slightly. "Lena, do you believe loving someone else means you deserve to be threatened?" Lena's eyes welled up. "No." "Then stop giving Marcus credit for what he chose to do." Across town, Adrian finished leading a workshop at the community center. It was the first time in weeks that he didn't think about Marcus while standing in front of a crowd. He saw nods, tears, smiles, real engagement. He lingered afterward to talk with a young trans man who had questions about transitioning while working in public education. The conversation grounded him, gave him a sliver of peace. But peace didn't last long. That evening, a text arrived from an unknown number. "I thought I mattered. Guess I was wrong." He stared at the screen. No name, but he knew. He didn't respond. Instead, he called his attorney and forwarded the message. Marcus had violated the no-contact order. Back at the motel, Marcus stared at the wall as the phone buzzed in his hand. No reply. Just silence. The shame was gone now. In its place was something colder, something more familiar. Detective Janes read the message twice before speaking. "It's vague," he said, "but given the restraining order, it qualifies, especially in context." Adrian sat across from him at the precinct conference table, fingers intertwined tightly. "So what happens now?" "We'll submit a violation report to the court," Janes said. "If the judge agrees, a warrant can be issued for his arrest. But Marcus has no fixed address right now, and unless we catch him moving, he could stay off-grid." Adrian nodded, jaw tight. "So, in the meantime, stay where it's public, don't engage, let us handle it." Adrian left feeling more exposed than protected. Across the city, Marcus wandered the aisles of a pawn shop with no real purpose. The clerk didn't look twice as he drifted between glass display cases, knives, watches, used electronics. At the back, a wall of hunting gear. He touched nothing, but he didn't leave either. When he finally returned to the motel, a police cruiser was parked 2 blocks away. He noticed, and kept walking, circling the block twice before slipping inside through the back entrance. That night, he packed a small duffel, just enough for travel. He'd already pawned his wedding ring earlier that morning. Meanwhile, Lena was at her sister's, curled on the couch with a cup of tea she hadn't touched. She hadn't heard from Marcus since the cryptic text Adrian received, but that only made it worse. No contact didn't mean peace. It meant unpredictability, and unpredictability meant danger. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and see him standing outside the window," she admitted softly. Her sister rubbed her shoulder. "He's not. And if he does, we'll call the police before he takes a step." But Lena had lived with Marcus long enough to know something others didn't. When he was quiet, when he vanished, that's when things turned. He was a man who needed control, and now he had none. The next day, Marcus used a prepaid phone to call the hospital where Lena worked. He knew she was on leave, but he asked to be transferred to her supervisor. "Just want to leave a message," he said, voice calm. The receptionist hesitated. "She's not here. Just tell her she never told the truth about me, and now she'll see what it costs." He hung up before they could trace the call. The receptionist, shaken, notified the hospital administrator. They, in turn, alerted Lena and forwarded the message to the police. This time, it was clear. It wasn't grief, it was intent. The arrest warrant was issued the next morning. A detective briefed both Lena and Adrian. Adrian was advised to stay with a friend out of town for a few days. Lena was placed under informal police protection. An unmarked patrol car would sit outside her sister's house overnight, and she was told not to return to her home until Marcus was in custody. But Marcus had vanished. The motel room was empty, the bed untouched. The prepaid phone had been tossed in a gas station trash can 2 towns over, the duffel bag gone. All that remained was a motel receipt with his check-in alias, John Elder, a name Lena once suggested they use for a future child. That detail chilled the responding officer. By mid-afternoon, Marcus had made it back into the city. He wore a baseball cap pulled low in a gray windbreaker. He used cash at a fast food restaurant, sat in a booth near the window, and watched the street outside for nearly 2 hours. No one noticed him. No one cared. He left a $10 bill on the table and walked east, toward the part of town where Adrian worked. Meanwhile, Adrian packed a small overnight bag and locked up his apartment. Before leaving, he took one last walk through the space. He paused at the bookshelf Lena had helped him build, the kitchen where they first kissed, the photo on the counter of them at the community gala. He texted Lena, "I'm leaving town until they find him. Please be safe." Lena replied, "You too. I'll keep my phone on." She hadn't told her sister about the workplace message. She didn't want to spread the fear, but it was there, curled in her stomach like a knot that wouldn't loosen. At 9:03 p.m., a neighbor spotted a man standing down the street from Adrian's apartment building, hands in his pockets, not moving. He didn't go up to the door, just stood watching. By the time police arrived, he was gone. That same night, Lena's doorbell rang. Her sister froze mid-sentence. Lena stood. 2 officers were already outside. Routine check-in. They'd knocked to confirm she was still there, but the effect lingered long after they left, that sense of someone coming, someone already too close. Back in the city, Marcus entered a pay-by-the-week rental off McGraw. No ID required. He paid 2 weeks in cash and requested a ground-floor unit with a side exit. When asked how long he planned to stay, he simply said, "Not long." The room Marcus rented was small and windowless. Just a bed, a nightstand, a rusted sink, and peeling paint. But it was quiet. Anonymous. No questions asked. And that was all he needed. He turned off his phone, sat down, waited. He hadn't eaten since the day before. He wasn't hungry. He replayed everything. Lena's face when she told him the truth. Adrian's calm voice the night they first spoke. The way people had looked at him in court like he was already guilty, like he didn't belong. They took everything, he told himself. And they'll walk away like I never mattered. That night he wrote a letter. He addressed it to no one, signed it with no name, just words. Rigid, calculated, cruel. At the same time, Lena tried to sleep through the sound of rain tapping against the window. She lay on her side, staring at the ceiling, trying not to check her phone again. She knew the police were nearby, knew she wasn't alone. And yet, she felt more exposed than ever. She didn't tell her sister what the message said. She didn't want to speak the words out loud. In the morning, Adrian called. He had driven 4 hours north to stay with an old friend near Traverse City. He hadn't slept either. Every sound outside made his heart punch against his ribs. "I don't know how long I can live like this," he told Lena over the phone. "I don't either," she said softly. They both sat in silence, shared it like an invisible thread between 2 war zones. Back in Detroit, Marcus mailed the letter. No return address. Just a blank envelope left in a downtown mailbox before sunrise. The letter would arrive 2 days later, but the consequences would come much sooner. By mid-morning, Marcus stood on a corner near Lena's old apartment building. He wasn't watching. He was waiting. That afternoon, a grocery delivery arrived at Lena's sister's house. The officer stationed across the street noted the unfamiliar driver. His plate was run, clean, nothing suspicious. But what no one noticed was that the order hadn't been placed by Lena or her sister. It had been placed through a public kiosk in an internet cafe 3 blocks from Marcus's motel. The name on the receipt, Eleanor W., Lena's full name. That evening, Marcus returned to his room and unzipped the duffel bag. Inside, under folded clothes and notebooks, was a gun wrapped in a towel. The same gun the police had let him keep once the charges had been downgraded in court months earlier. Legal, registered, forgotten, until now. He placed it on the table and sat down across from it. As the light faded, Marcus didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe like a man who wanted to live. The letter arrived the next morning. It was addressed in plain block handwriting, no signature. Inside was a single typed page. "You said you needed to find yourself. You found someone else instead. You said you didn't want lies, but you became one. You left me hollow, and he filled the space like I never existed. I'm not asking for anything anymore. I'm coming to return what's mine." There were no threats, no dates, no names. But for the detective reading it aloud to Lena in her sister's kitchen, the message was clear. "This qualifies as implicit threat," he said. "It won't help us predict where or when, but it gives us more cause." Lena sat at the table, eyes fixed on the linoleum floor. "He's not going to stop." "No," the detective admitted, "but we will catch him, or he'll make a mistake." But Marcus wasn't making mistakes. He was making decisions. That afternoon, Adrian returned to Detroit. He hadn't planned to, but something in him couldn't stay away. "Running won't fix this," he told his friend as he packed. "I need to be where I live, even if it's hard." He notified police, asked for temporary protection. They agreed to conduct periodic checks. When he arrived back at his apartment, he paused before opening the door. Everything was untouched, but he still checked every closet, every window, every corner. Meanwhile, Marcus stood 4 blocks away in an alley behind a gas station watching the street. He had seen Adrian's car pull in earlier, watched him unlock the front door. He now knew where Adrian was. He hadn't been sure. Now he was. That night, Adrian tried to sleep. He placed a chair against the door, slept in the living room with the lights on. At 2:17 a.m., he thought he heard footsteps in the hallway, but when he checked, it was empty. Back at the station, the letter was logged and forwarded to the local prosecutor. But the warrant already existed. All they needed now was to find Marcus. At 4:06 a.m., a security camera at a nearby bridge caught a man walking westbound. The timestamp showed he was only a few blocks from Lena's sister's house. He carried nothing in his hands, but his jacket was zipped high. That footage wouldn't be reviewed until 6 hours later, and by then, Marcus had vanished again. He left no prints, no tracks, only the pressure of silence. On a cold Sunday morning, Marcus moved through the city like a shadow. He hadn't shaved in over a week. The pistol rested at the bottom of his coat pocket. His grip on it was firm but invisible. He walked without expression, his eyes distant. He knew where Adrian would be. Volunteer hours at a small community shelter off Grand River. He'd checked the schedule the night before from a public terminal. Adrian was there, setting up tables for a free breakfast program. He felt exposed, even inside, but he told himself that being present mattered more than hiding. He was tired of living as prey. Just after 9 a.m., Marcus stepped inside. The shelter was full of chatter and movement. Volunteers, families, people sitting with coffee. He scanned the crowd and saw Adrian at the back near the supply crates. He walked toward him. It happened fast. Adrian looked up. Their eyes locked. A frozen second. Then Marcus reached into his coat. Adrian's hand went up instinctively, but so did another voice. "Gun! He's got a gun!" A volunteer screamed. Chairs scattered. Marcus drew the pistol, but didn't raise it. He stood still, arm low, trembling. Adrian didn't move. "You don't have to do this," he said. The shelter's back door burst open. 2 officers, one of whom had been trailing Marcus's last known movements near the river. They'd followed a hunch after the grocery delivery account was traced back to the internet cafe where Marcus had logged in. "Drop it, now!" Marcus closed his eyes. "I just wanted to be remembered," he said. Then slowly he placed the gun on the floor and stepped back. He didn't run, didn't resist. He let them cuff him while the shelter emptied in chaos. Outside, Lena received a call from the detective who'd promised to notify her first. "He's in custody," the voice said. No one was hurt. She collapsed into the nearest chair, not from relief, but from the release of weeks of held breath. Adrian gave a full statement and refused medical attention. He stood in the street afterward, coat zipped, eyes glassy. The police car drove past him slowly, Marcus inside, head bowed. He never looked out the window. The following month, Marcus was formally charged with multiple counts, including violating a protective order, unlawful possession of a firearm in a restricted setting, and attempted aggravated assault. His public defender entered a plea of not guilty by reason of diminished capacity. The court ordered a psychiatric evaluation. Lena never testified. She submitted a letter instead, sealed in an envelope. She never revealed what it said. Adrian moved into a new apartment a month later, in a different part of the city. He resumed work, slowly, and began speaking more publicly about survival, not fear. Marcus was found fit to stand trial but refused to speak in court. He was convicted on all charges, sentenced to 15 years without parole. He never appealed.